So, this week isn't so much a review, more an exercise in raising public awareness. I don't know how many of you out there are familiar with the works of Nabwana IGG and the Wakaliwood film scene, but I very recently discovered these movies for myself, and they totally took my breath away. In fact, had I not found out about them in June last year, they probably would have been covered in my last season. Unfortunately, it was just 2 months too late. So I'm hoping to change that today. Wakaliwood touts itself as being the home of the best movies, and the history of what is effectively one of Uganda's only continuously active film studios is more ridiculous, over the top and unbelievable than the movies they produce. And that's saying something. I'm not exaggerating when I say that if I pitched the story of how Wakaliwood began as a film studio, they'd throw me out for not having a believable enough premise. It's insane. We don't really have an official start date for Wakaliwood. That's because they didn't really keep any consistent records until around 2010. Or rather, they couldn't keep any consistent records because of the means with which all of this started. What we can say is that it all began at some point around 2003 or 2004, when a young man by the name of Nabwana Isaac Godfrey Jeffrey decided to take a computer repair course. He could only afford the opening session and dropped out shortly thereafter, but that first session taught him enough about computers that he was able to build his own using scrap material that he was able to source from a local landfill site. Nabwana lived, and continues to live, in Wakaliwood in Kampala, Uganda. By all accounts a rather poor neighbourhood with some real crime problems. Nabwana's always been fascinated by Western movies that would tour on travelling picture shows through Uganda, and in particular he loved US action movies. And more than anything else, he wanted to make his own incredible action movies, but with a distinct Ugandan twist. And as such, in late 2004, around the time of the birth of his first daughter, he finally decided to take a shot on his dreams by founding Ramon Film Productions, named after both of his grandmothers with whom he was very close. Nabwana acted as director, producer, writer, editor, camera operator, pretty much the whole package. He self-taught himself everything from making notes on how US action films worked from a Cine and direction perspective to figuring out 3-act structures and how to pace movies. Everything. Which is just ridiculous and shows a real raw talent. But it goes one further than that even. He didn't just self-teach himself how to make movies, he then self-taught himself how to build a computer to edit said movie. He also self-taught himself how to build props, by once again raiding landfill sites and junkyards for parts. He's been able to construct everything from prop guns to sets to even the chassis of a full-blown helicopter, which regularly makes appearances in his movies, and rightly so. He produced his first film in 2005, and between then and the time I'm recording this, February 2021, he's completed 46 feature-length films, with at least a dozen if not 24 short films, and between 6 to 10 films announced and currently in live production and development. And do you want to know what the most tragic part of this entire experience is? Of those 46 feature films, only 5 currently exist today. 5. What happened to the other 41? Lost. You see, Nabwana built his editing machine from scrap parts, and when you're doing stuff like that, you don't generally get to choose the best parts, and you certainly don't get to have a massive hard drive. And more so, you certainly aren't thinking about archive and preservation. His earliest films, he'd edit them, show them to his friends and family and people within his village, and then delete them to make room for the next film. And he'd repeat this process over and over again, slowly building up better materials and learning from each film how to improve and streamline and enhance as he went on. This was how he made movies through most of the 2000s, though at some point in the late 2000s he was finally able to procure a DVD burner, allowing him to run off copies of his latest movies to sell in and around his city. But again, these were super limited supply and he never kept copies for himself. So if you happen to have been in Uganda between 2005 and 2009 and a guy sold you some weird action movie, maybe get in touch with the guys over at Wakaliwood, as you may hold the very last copy of one of their long-lost missing films. Anyway, the first complete Wakaliwood film that's known to exist is 2010's Who Killed Captain Alex. And even that isn't from a master source. They effectively managed to track down one of the original DVD copies and rip it. Who Killed Captain Alex is no doubt also preserved mainly because it was one of Nabwana's first films to end up dumped on YouTube. And it's from here really that everything kind of took off for him. The internet saw his movies and their reaction was, "What on earth is this?" And in one case, a viewer actually left his life in the United States to travel out to Uganda to go and help Nabwana make more movies. A team slowly started forming around Nabwana, and requests started coming in from international film festivals to screen his work and to hear this man talk about his history. And that's more or less where we sit today. He's just released his latest movie, Crazy World, which was a lot of good fun, I might add, and despite ongoing worldwide issues, he's still actively working on movies and expanding. Hell, the social media presence has exploded over the last couple of years, with a frankly astounding website and an incredibly active and social Twitter account. These guys get it. These guys make movies because they enjoy making movies. And to see such a raw passion on display, to see such unwavering dedication to vision over and above anything else, is beyond awe-inspiring. These people are pure cinema. No more, no less. You can say what you like about the quality of their productions, but the fact that their hearts are not only in the right place, but fixed on delivering action-packed gold, to me, shows a rare example of one of the few true filmmakers still actively producing out there that hasn't been corrupted. But Luke, I've kissed butt way too much on this so far already, so if you've liked what you've seen so far, I've put a link in the description both to the website and to the distributor of a very nice and very comprehensive Blu-ray set of their first two found films. And I highly recommend you pick them up. If only for the sheer unbridled delight these movies brought me. They're silly, grand and action-packed, and I'm sure you'll love them too. So, Who Killed Captain Alex? And before I get to the plot on this one, there's one last thing we need to mention. A very common trait in Ugandan storytelling is that there are two hosts. One who effectively tells a straight story, and a second performer who's literally there just to take the piss out of anyone and everyone, both in the story and in the audience listening to the story. Think of it a bit like having your own Rodney Dangerfield or Joel Hodgson sat next to Stephen King as he reads from Carrie or Christine. They constantly interrupt with genuinely funny jokes, lines and music, basically riffing the story MST3K style. Well, in Wakaliwood they've pulled that trait clean into the 21st century, and here we meet VJ Emmy. VJ stands for Video Joker, and that's what VJ Emmy does best. He makes these movies, no doubt about it. The movies are fun without him, but with him, they become something really special. He constantly picks on and messes around with all the characters, regularly breaking the fourth wall and randomly playing karaoke music of much-loved classics when he gets bored. He's brilliant. The film itself is super short plot-wise and only occupies around 70 minutes of runtime. The film follows the ongoing battle between the military and the Tiger Mafia. The Tiger Mafia are Uganda's most dangerous organised crime unit. They cause serious trouble. So much so that the military's been drafted in to get rid of them once and for all. Leading the army is Captain Alex. He's clean-cut, no nonsense, and can take on an entire army of Tiger Mafia fighters no trouble at all. So much so that they end up actually capturing the brother of the leader of the Tiger Mafia. The Mafia leader, called Richard, first tries to bribe officers to get his brother out of jail. When that fails, he puts a bounty on Alex's head. He wants him back alive, however, and, well, if you've seen the title of this movie, you'll learn pretty quickly that things don't quite go to plan. Yes, someone manages to kill Captain Alex. But it isn't anyone from the Tiger Mafia. They were in the process of working on a kidnapping plan. Nor was it one of his own men. They loved Captain Alex. Confusion begins to set in, and Alex's brother returns to town. He's known as the Ugandan Bruce Lee, Bruce U, and he begins to try and find answers on who killed his brother, whilst also seeking training to have the best possible skills to take on more of the Tiger Mafia. What follows then is two plots. One where Richard tries to spring his brother from jail whilst also trying to figure out who killed Captain Alex, and one following Bruce Yu and the soldiers as they continue to fight the Tiger Mafia while also trying to figure out who killed Captain Alex. There's legendary fights on land and in the air as the film reaches a brutal and hilariously over-the-top finale, with an ending I genuinely did not see coming. Now, I need to stress that you aren't really watching this movie for the plot. I mean, the plot is kind of important, but only in the sense that there are references that'll be worked into VJ Emmy's routines later down the line that, while paying attention to the slower and quieter opening 10 to 15 minutes, will make the rest of the film even more entertaining. I personally went through this film purely on the strength of the performances and the action scenes, which, to put it bluntly, are bloody good fun. Not just because some of the lines of this movie are downright entertaining, but because the vibe that everyone involved is just having a really good time is almost palpable. The pacing is almost breakneck, and as someone with ADHD, while I'll admit that it most definitely played into some of my bad habits, I loved that this movie only ever really hung on scenes for about 3 to 5 minutes at a time. There's just so much happening, and happening so quickly that I was genuinely in my element, jumping from plot piece to plot piece, and that by the time the end credits hit, I wasn't even entirely sure what I'd just sat through. But the ADHD part of my brain felt like I'd just taken it out for pizza and a rock concert. It was pumped, and it wanted more. And given that this film is pretty much 40 minutes of goofy over-the-top acting and action married up to 30 minutes of plot, I was surprised that those 30 minutes genuinely got a bit touching at times. I mean, I can't say that they were Oscar winners, but there were scenes in this that really made me feel something, which is a damn sight better than most of the films I've reviewed on this channel. It's a swift script that basically does what it needs to do and then gets going on the next production, which is a theme that's quite prominent throughout Wakaliwood cinema. It's enthusiastic to the point that it's telling you about the films that won't be coming out for another 3 to 5 years while you're in the middle of an action scene in the current film. That's another trope, it works both ways too. Characters who appear in this film get referenced and name-dropped in other Wakaliwood films. The Tiger Mafia are regularly recurring villains. I'm not 100% sure if they pop up in movies earlier than this one, but they definitely turn up in movies after this one, and VJ Emmy is in most Wakaliwood films and references both Captain Alex, the Tiger Mafia, and characters from other films all the time. Which is nice, as it gives the sense that Wakaliwood has some kind of extended universe, a bit like the Tromaverse or the MCU, but way more interesting. A lot of people tend to conflate direction and Cine, and while the two are fraternal, to say the least, direction tends to be split really between the ability to control a cast to deliver the intended performances, and the ability to control a set to deliver the intended vision. And in that regard, and given what Nabwana had to work with, I think he absolutely aces the direction here. What you're seeing here is literally pure, unrefined vision. It's clear, it's fast-paced, it's distinctive, not only in showcasing and defining Nabwana's style and vision as a director, but in being able to take elements of Ugandan storytelling and performance and to so effortlessly update them into modern filmmaking tropes of the fledgling Ugandan film industry. The most debatable element of the Wakaliwood system is probably the cinematography, which, depending on how important you view your visuals on a film, will probably be the make or break as to whether you get on with these movies. On the one hand, in comparison to other low, no-budget films out there, these look awful. They're static, uninspired shot setups that use terrible CGI with hard cuts that aren't necessarily fluid, and I know people who would watch this movie knowing full well that that's the intention of these films and that this is the kind of thing that have become a trope of these movies, and would still abjectly hate it because it isn't Drive, and it won't upscale to 4K. Equally, there's people like me, or people who lead fully fulfilled lives as I call them, who get that these films aren't supposed to be Citizen Kane and are more than happy to buckle down and enjoy the ghost train ride for what it is. 70 minutes of silly, over-the-top fun with the odd nice moment thrown in. So yeah, while the Cine is the weakest element of this film, if you're basing your opinion on this movie purely on how smooth its panning shots are and whether it crosses the line, you're probably watching this film for the wrong reasons. The OST. Well, it's not an original score as far as I can tell. I believe it's predominantly made up of library and stock tracks, but they almost all fit the tone of the film and have a fast-paced, action-packed vibe about them. Even VJ gets a couple of moments to mess around with the soundtrack when he gets bored, leading to karaoke versions of Mamma Mia by ABBA and Kiss from a Rose by Seal to make a totally bizarre and unexpected appearance in and out of the film. I kinda wish I had more to say about it than that. It's not offensive and it works about as well as it could work. I think there's some pretty decent choices here and it's all more or less consistent with the other elements of this production. Equally, as mentioned earlier, the performances are pretty consistent across the board too. They're sometimes a bit eccentric, but in my opinion, there are no objectively bad performances on display here. All the more impressive is that none of these actors were actors before Wakaliwood. The majority of the cast in Ramon film productions are locals to the village Nabwana lives in. It's Amdram. But some of the cast go above and beyond performing, helping with prop assembly and camera work. Oh yeah, and they mostly all do their own stunts. It's a very high-risk reward to be in a Wakaliwood film. On the one hand, you might break a bone, but god damn it if you won't have a fantastic time in the process. Who Killed Captain Alex was initially released in 2010 on DVD within Uganda on a super limited run. When that ran out, Nabwana had to wipe the original master footage from his computer to make room for the next film, and as a result, this film was considered lost for a brief time. However, after interest in the film picked up via YouTube and a few notable mentions popped up on Twitter, they were able to reclaim a DVD copy of Who Killed Captain Alex and issued a reprint through their website. This increased awareness even further outside of Uganda until finally in 2019, with the help of the AGFA, both this film and the sideways sequel Bad Black were released on Blu-ray as a DVD Blu-ray combo pack called the Wakaliwood Super Action Volume 1 Collection, implying there'll be a Volume 2. Please let there be a Volume 2. And AGFA have really hit it out of the park with this one. This Blu-ray set is insanely comprehensive, with tons of interviews, making-ofs, reviews, news spots, Q&As, trailers, and even weird things like short films, lead-in videos for film festivals, and promotional materials. If you've ever seen any of these Wakaliwood films before and you liked it, or you just want to learn more about the filmmaking process, this is the set for you. It's currently available through the Wakaliwood main site, the AGFA website, and Amazon, and I highly recommend you pick it up at your next convenience. Who Killed Captain Alex, to me, is a testimony to what's possible if you really, truly believe in your own work. I see so many people who complain and moan and whine about the state of their own work, how if they only had the money, or the viewership, or the space, or the skill to make their dream visions. And then there's Nabwana, making movies for $200 that are filmed on literal streets and scrublands, who's just happy that his movies are being seen by anyone, enjoying success and an international distribution of his releases alongside Q&A talks internationally. And I'm not exaggerating about that $200 number either. That's how much the entirety of Who Killed Captain Alex cost to produce. It's around £144, which is just fantastic. I loved Who Killed Captain Alex. It's an action-packed, fast-paced, goofy, cheap and cheerful bag of fun that made me laugh and cheer along right the way through. It's one of those films that the moment I saw it, I knew I needed to pass it on. I don't know who it is out there who watches my show who needs to see this movie as soon as possible, but you need to see this movie as soon as possible. Better still, you don't even have to buy it. The official Wakaliwood YouTube channel has a link to the full film with subtitles on its page. Again, link in the description. So what are you waiting for? This is a movie that's just begging to be watched. It's short, sweet, and damn good fun. Get on it.